I walk through the shadow of death left to fear. This is a journey through the halls of hell.
Yes, people, what is good? I am BA, back again with a movie review for you. This week I want to talk about Casino, and for me, this is my favourite Martin Scorsese film. A lot of people will say that Goodfellas is the superior of the two movies, and I can understand why. And for me, Casino is a lot like Snatch is to Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, and that when Guy Ritchie dropped Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, it felt so fresh that when Snatch came out, it felt like more of Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, even though if you watch the films side by side, or if Snatch had came out first, you would probably admit it was the funner, sharper, slightly wittier, slightly punchier script. But Lock, Stock did come out first, so Snatch does seem like more of the same. But for me, if we're weighing them up as two individual movies, and if we were to forget that Lock, Stock began the trend, I just genuinely think Snatch is better and more entertaining for me personally. And I feel the exact same when the argument of Goodfellas and Casino comes up. Goodfellas is another one of my favourite movies of all time. It is so good, but the actual story is not a one-of-a-kind story. Joe Pistone, who is still alive, I watched his interview with Michael Francis on YouTube last year. You know, he did infiltrate these New York crime families. He was a police officer. He did get a few people from that world shot for doing what he did, so, you know, I hope he can sleep easy with that on his conscience. I'm sure he can. But it is a true story. But also, it is a story as old as time. Even before the Mafia, there is stories of Judases who are part of fraternities who sell their entire fraternity out just to escape something or be promised something or to get away with something they've done. And that's what Goodfellas is. Yet just another story of yet just another dude who either infiltrated or was already in the Mafia and ended up selling them out. Unfortunately, and I'm sure the Mafia don't like hearing this, it's a story as old as time. Just in case the Mafia didn't know, I'm not in the Mafia, but I'm just letting you guys know, your code of omerta clearly doesn't mean shit, because anytime one of these guys gets a blowtorch put to their feet, or the threat of a 25-year sentence, you see how much burning an effigy of the Virgin Mary does for their loyalty. Diatribe aside, that's my argument. Goodfellas is a story that has been retold, and will be retold, because it's a story as old as time. Casino, on the other hand, is a one-off story in history to me. That small moment in history where the Mafia saw a desert and saw dollar signs in their eyes, and they had the Teamsters Union behind them to bankroll the construction of these giant casinos which they just went in and ran after they were constructed. And in the early days of Vegas, the Mafia had a huge chunk of that strip, and they did ruin it for themselves by being too Mafia-like in a place that wasn't going to let them get away with it forever. And then what happened? The real Mafia showed up and took over. Corporations. Nowadays, every single casino in Vegas is backed by a huge corporate entity. They are worse than any Mafia ever could have been, and they are making way more money, leaving nothing left for our Italian go-getter friends. And that is the story which Casino shows. It shows how the Mafia got to go to Vegas, got to get a huge chunk of all of that money, and then through too much criminal activity, putting themselves on the radar too much, and by corporations just showing up and saying, yeah, no, we're taking all this now, they lost it all. And to me, that is such a unique, true story in the annals of human history, which actually happened within the last 100 years. Think how different Vegas would be nowadays if the Mafia hadn't got the majority of their share taken off of them. Now, of course, there are still Mafia casinos in Vegas, I'm aware of this, but a lot of the big ones now are genuinely not. It's just like going to Disneyland. This movie also shares that really quick editing style of Goodfellas, which crams so much information in such a short space, and through narration and quick visual striking images, it manages to never feel rushed and just feels like the ultimate pacing to never make you bored. Considering how long these movies are, they fly by for me, both Casino and Goodfellas, just due to the editing style he employs. Everything's so interesting. One of my favourite scenes in any movie is when you first see Robert De Niro walking around the floor of the casino, explaining the hustles, explaining who's watching who, do, and just the sort of dynamics that go on under the hood in a place like that. It felt like you were getting a look into the side of the world you don't normally get to see. Because unless you're like some sort of savant with a deck of playing cards and get hired as one of their dealers, or perhaps maybe you get hired as a waitress, 99% of people will go through this world never quite seeing what is behind the door in a place like that. Joe Pesci basically reprises his role from Goodfellas. He's another small, insane man, and he is playing another real character, which is the funny thing. He played a real character in Goodfellas, notorious psychopath. That's the one thing, by the way, let me get this out of the way. Mafia movies never really go into detail about this, but let me tell you something. Some of the dudes who are quote-unquote mafia hitmen, they were literally just like serial killers who just so happened to be born of Italian-American descent and grew up in the same neighbourhoods as their mafia friends who were about making money. But some of these dudes were legit just absolute psychos who were painted with the brush of a hitman because the mafia told them to go kill someone one day. Trust me, some of these dudes are legit tapped. And the guy that Joe Pesci played in Goodfellas seemed like he was a legitimately tapped guy. As is the person who Joe Pesci plays in Casino. This guy is basically written, at least in the film, as the person who's primarily responsible for it all coming crumbling down. He just acts too much like a gangster when they need him to act more like an accountant. The mafia just went to Vegas thinking they could do their traditional mafia shit, and first of all, the locals of that area, deeply rooted in the surrounding regions due to oil money or whatever money they have, they're not just gonna lay down and roll over for the mafia if they walk about swinging their dicks. And then just unnecessary shit, like when one of your friends is running a casino, it's probably a good idea if you don't go and commit petty burglaries, so if you're caught you are linked back to a giant casino owner tarring his name, for example. And then Sharon Stone's character shows up, and Jesus Christ, I think every single man in the world who has seen this film uses her character in this as a barometer of the type of vagina we need to stay far the fuck away from. She's absolutely gorgeous, she's charming, she's cheeky, she's a hustler, she's a go-getter. Like, guys like those qualities, to see a self-sufficient woman out there hustling other idiot dudes, and we're above that and we're like, look at her go, she's got this world figured out. That is how she will come across to you when you first meet her. But she'll be slipping your poker chips in her pocket, she'll be doing all her little sneaky shit behind your back, and then before you know it, when you put a ring on her finger, her true depression and drug addiction and all that will come pouring out. Her character is like a Wiseman tale as to make sure the woman you're seeing is not a fucking psychopath. And you've just got to feel sorry for Robert De Niro's character in that dynamic. I haven't went into it yet, but Robert De Niro plays Eighth Rothstein. He's the guy who was just a naturally gifted gambler, and also he built his life to be that way, so he knew all the tipsters who knew about the horse with the bum leg or the football player who'd been drinking the night before, etc. A true savant in his field, and also absolutely bulletproof to being hustled for money. So he was the perfect person for the mafia to send to Vegas to put into the position of running the casino, because he would run it from the top down under an absolute microscope. And the movie is just this savant genius who knows how to make money non-stop, being given a casino, but also, unfortunately, being given psychopathic Joe Pesci as his best friend, and also, unfortunately, being given psychopathic Sharon Stone as his wife. Now, I say being given. Robert De Niro's flaw in this film is women. He throws himself at Sharon Stone. He completely understands how much of a gamble it is to get with her. He even says a line of dialogue, for a guy that likes a sure shot, this is quite the gamble sort of thing. And I agree. It's almost so against his character type to want to be with a woman this unstable. It almost doesn't work, but I just see it as like his fatal flaw. And yes, it comes back to bite him in the ass in the end. Also, is it just me, or is it like there's nothing quite like Martin Scorsese violence? I think it's because he never cuts away. He doesn't use quick camera cuts. Like when the guy's getting pistol whipped in Goodfellas, it's just like 30 seconds of a singular camera shot watching a guy walk up to a guy in his driveway and then beating him half to death. No cuts, nothing. Yeah, cool. Just beat him with the pistol. I genuinely believe that extra died. And this film has some classic Scorsese violence with a guy getting his head put in a vice in one scene, so Get a Kleenex out for that. But yes, all in all, when I think of my favourite Scorsese movie, I always go back to Casino. It's literally infinitely rewatchable. That's how entertaining it is. I could not put on the first 10 minutes of this film and think this is dragging for me. I would end up watching the full thing and it would feel like a minute had passed. Truly one of his masterpieces. He has a few masterpieces, but I think Casino is the apex of the pyramid for me. Most people will disagree and say Goodfellas, others will say something completely outside of those two. But yeah, my Scorsese #1 movie, Casino. Absolutely love it. I've been waiting to do a quick review of it just because not only do I want to review interesting things that I've just recently watched, I also want to review just my favourite things of all time. And if you've liked this reaction, click like, subscribe, comment down below if you want to say what's up, and come over to the Patreon and join the gang and help support me personally. And until next time, I've been BA. Peace.